Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the post-game show, National Championship. BCS champions, I know it's a long shot. It's the Auburn Tigers versus Oregon. Phenomenal game. Jason, take us from the top because you actually did pick Auburn over Oregon in this game. How do you think the things played out tonight?
Oh, I knew it was going to be a defensive struggle from the start. You know, both defenses were phenomenal all year, even though both the offenses were powerhouses in both of their divisions and pretty much all year. I mean, you don't go scoring 40-plus points a game and not have a phenomenal offense, but both of the defenses really showed up today.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. And again, folks, if you're just joining us now after the post-game show, Jeff Johnson live, Chesapeake, Virginia. We flew in Jason Bunning, powerhouse defensive end from Texas. We came in here tonight looking for an explosive game with the BCS actually proving all of the naysayers wrong. And I'll tell you what, Jason, as much controversy as the BCS has been through this year about should these teams be allowed to play in these big games, I think Oregon, for their division in the Pac-10, definitely kept pace with an SEC team that was the powerhouse and pretty much dominated the SEC hands down. Sure, there was a couple close games, but they also played a couple of teams that were 6-6 throughout the year, and so you add that element to the ball game. However, at the end of the day, Auburn's offense, Cam Newton, they prevail in the national championship game. And I'll tell you what, some of the surprising things for me, Jason, were just the amount of turnovers in this ball game.
Oh, I agree. It was definitely, like I said, a defensive ball game. The guys were getting after the ball. There were some questionable plays by the quarterbacks on both the Auburn and the Oregon side. There was a couple of times where, you know, they were throwing the ball and trying to force the ball, and that's where the majority of the turnovers came. Except for that last one there in the end that brought Oregon back in the ball game. You know, I really saw Auburn's defense shutting down the Oregon offense.
Yeah. And with that, if you're the offensive coordinator for either Auburn or Oregon at this point, as an Auburn offensive coordinator, do you make that call down to the field to call a timeout with 17 seconds left in the ball game? You have one. Do you make that call?
See, and that's where I'm confused. I believe you're talking about Oregon here. Whenever they called the timeout when you're down on the 2-yard line, or the half-yard line for that matter, I don't know that I call that timeout. I mean, you can pretty much tell at that point that you're almost at a lose-lose situation. The best thing you can have is a blocked field goal at this point. I didn't really see Auburn going in there and scoring a touchdown. I did think that Auburn sending their field goal unit out there with 10 seconds left, forcing Oregon to use that timeout. That was a brilliant play by the head coach. It was a brilliant play. You make them burn their timeout. That way they have no way to stop the clock anymore. You run a fake. You know, you kneel the ball down, get the ball in the center, give your kicker a shot. That's the ball game.
Yeah. And again, I'm sure we'll hear this as we go, further into the week about how, with Oregon letting that clock run down and should they have called timeout or should they have not called timeout. I think in this instance, you might actually be right, Jim. And Texas football is huge. We know from day one as a Pop Warner, you come through the ranks and you play, especially West Texas football. It's huge. When you get into these elevated levels of play and the extreme amounts of play calling that come into play by these coaches and offensive coordinators, I mean, let's not face it. I mean, these guys are paid big bucks to make these play calls. And when you get into this, do you call a timeout or not? It's hands down. I think you would have made a great call there. I think that Auburn did a great job by forcing their field goal unit on the field and then looking confused to maybe actually get that extra timeout called. And Chiswick did just exactly what he wanted. I think Auburn played a great ball game. I think both teams played a ball game that was just phenomenal, and they do deserve to be number 1 and 2. Now, where we stack up next year, it still remains to be seen. But I'll tell you what, I mean, we couldn't ask for a better BCS championship game than what we had tonight.
That's right. It was phenomenal. I mean, the back and forth, the offense and the defenses all played phenomenal. I mean, the defenses both, they showed up to play. You're going into this ball game, you're playing the number 1, offense in the nation. Auburn's playing the number 2 offense in the nation. They're number 1 in points per game. They're putting up 49 points a game. That's almost 50 points a game. And you shut them down and they only scored 19 on you. I mean, hands down, defense won this championship.
Sure, and as a head coach, you've got to be happy with the way your team performs. Sure, it was slow leading out, but at the time when it comes time for that standoff to happen, and you look up and you say, you know what? Yes, we're both 40 points a game plus, but this is one of those situations, like I said, where we were arguably before, where the BCS got it right. Now, folks, if you like I said, if you're just joining us, if you're out there in football land like the rest of us are, and you're looking at the BCS and how this computer scheme is matching up to everybody else, we know that there are arguments that pose every week about why players and why teams should be ranked where they are. The BCS got it right in this episode, and I think when you're talking a one possession game, 3 points down to 17 seconds, the BCS got it right in this one. So I'm all for the BCS. Again, one thing I do want to touch on, we've seen a lot of great football. Jason, talk to me about the turnovers that we saw today. And with the turnovers, you and I both talked about the officiating that's happened this year, both on the collegiate side and the NFL, about how some things should have been called, some things not. Bringing in the replays, all the things that lead up to these ball games being down to what they are. Was this a football game that you saw, in your opinion, would be more of an officiating side, or do you think these two teams just went out and gave it everything?
No, not at all. I think the Big Ten officiating crew did a fantastic job today. There were a few missed calls, but I mean that's going to happen in any facet of the game, from, like you said, Pop Warner football to the NFL. They're going to miss a call. They're going to miss a hold.
Sure.
There's holding basically on every play, as every commentator will tell you. It's always in the game. It's whether the official catches it or not. Today I didn't see as many missed calls. There may have been 2 or 3 questionable that were not called. But from my standpoint, I think it was a well-officiated game. I think the guys played phenomenal football, and it was just a hard-fought football game from the beginning.
Yeah, and again, in agreement with you always. It's set aside that we're not supposed to pick on the officiating crews because of how tormenting the game can be for them. But the bottom line still falls is that we have the instant replay, we have the challenges by the coaches,
right.
We have the flags that are thrown on the field, not to mention the plays that they actually see happening at the time. So, having said that, these guys have a really tough job, and it's sort of kind of outside the lines to pick on the officiating crew because they do have a tough job out there. However, when you're at home and you're a spectator, and whether you're for the team or against the team, and you see the call that should have been made, there are probably 5 more that should have been called on the same play, whether opposing or for. And I think you're right. The Pac-10 officiating crew did an outstanding job tonight. I think it was a clean game for the most part. We didn't see too much roughhousing going on between the two teams, as we did yesterday with the NFL. And again, I think that the public could not ask more out of a BCS championship game than what we saw tonight.
Oh, I agree completely. It was just a well-played game by both sides. The coaches did a phenomenal job, both on offense and defense, trying to control the clock, and forcing turnovers. And again, that's really the key to the ball game, was the turnovers. The interceptions, the fumble by Cam Newton, that could have been disastrous. The fact that they scored that 2-point conversion at the end and tied it up, I mean, right at that point, you see the momentum shift in Oregon's favor, and then Auburn responded. And that's the key to being a championship ball club, is how do you respond whenever controversy is at your front door? Like,
Sure.
What do you say when you had the lead pretty much the whole game? Besides the first quarter, you had the lead pretty much the whole game. You thought you had it in the bag, and then boom, accidents happen. Now you're tied up going into overtime.
Yeah, and again, I hate to use the facade of it can happen on any given Saturday, Sunday, or Monday. And in this case, it was Monday. Oregon definitely played a heck of a season, and you got to go out to all their coaches and staff. Great university there. They've turned their program around in so many ways. Auburn, it's been a half a century since they've been to a bowl or to the BCS championship game. And I'll tell you right now, hands down, both of these ball clubs played a phenomenal game. I can't give enough out. So, folks, we're all out of time here. We are going to wrap it up. I want to thank Jason Bunning flying in from Levon, Texas. Jason, thank you for coming out. I appreciate you being here commentating the game with us. And tune in on Saturday, folks. We got NFL Playoff Live right here from Chesapeake, Virginia. This is Jeff Johnson, Jason Bunning for the Montevideo Post Game Show. Have a good night.